Adam, good to see you. Thanks for taking a bit of time to come and have a chat. I know you've got plenty to keep you occupied, so I appreciate you giving me a bit of your time. So let's kick off with something that you spoke about last time. You said to me, AI is changing the way people book hotels.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, that's quite an interesting idea that, I hadn't realized that was happening. I mean, just
Yeah.
explain what you mean by that and why does it matter to the hotel industry, for
Yeah,
example?
sure. So I think probably the biggest thing that's happening is obviously we have to be careful because I think AI is so very broad.
Yeah,
When we say, I think in the context of your question, it's really about how AI search is changing hotels and how we book hotels. So to give you some practical sort of examples of this, not 2 years ago, we would have all probably, if we're looking for a hotel somewhere, we'd have might have started on booking.com or Google,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we'd have searched hotels in location. And the way we would have searched would have been very sort of simple, and hotels in location with a pool, for example. Now, with the emergence of AI search, we're being encouraged by Google itself, a traditional search engine, to um, be far more conversational in our prompts. And obviously, we've all become accustomed to the likes of ChatGPT in terms of how we can interact with an AI, a generative AI tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these. So we don't search for hotels in London with parking. We now say something like, "Oh, do you know what? I'm really looking for a weekend away in London. Preferably, I want somewhere near Hyde Park, and it needs to have parking, and it's actually for an anniversary, so something a bit special." The level of context and intent that we're now providing, or that certainly we're being encouraged to provide to the when we search, is so much more detailed and so much more such greater intent that we're putting into these search engines. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is that AI, if we look at the numbers, ChatGPT, based on it's been hovering around 800 million weekly active users, but that's for the last sort of probably 6 months. But that's because
yeah,
they've not recently released any figures. But if we look at how quickly they've got to that 800 million weekly active users, it's in the same, so it's broadly about sort of a year and a half
mm,
that it's sort of doubled and it keeps doubling. Um, it took the internet about 8 years to get to that level of weekly active
yeah.
users. So the rate of adoption of this
Incredible,
technology,
isn't it?
and purely I'm talking about, search, pure search, not, chatbots and all the other AI uses that are out there, which is incredible. If we look at how people are changing their search behavior, it's true of everything, whether you're searching for a pair of shoes or a car, but hotels or certainly travel lends itself well to AI chat or AI search adoption. So I think it's enormously impactful because I'm starting all of my keynote presentations at the moment by saying the way your customers are searching for hotels has changed more in the last 18 months than it has in the
Yeah,
previous 18
yeah,
years.
yeah,
Huge disruption, and obviously that affects everything else in terms of who they pick for
yeah.
their
And
hotel stay.
and and in terms of your business, I mean, what are you
Yeah.
trying to achieve in that context? I mean, is this about helping clients understand that the world that they're in is changing, or is it you're trying to do something very specific for them? I mean, give
Yeah,
us a flavor of that.
yeah. So I run Formula. We're a digital growth agency based in London, but we work across three continents for hotels and hotel brands and groups. What we're trying to do is keep hotel brands and groups abreast of this change because it is happening so fast. Our sort of mission, if you like, is to make hotels as visible as possible to customers that want to stay with them. And this can vary from, country house hotels that are independent that want to maximize their visibility and compete with the bigger groups down the road. But it also lends itself just as equally to hotel groups that are spending eye-watering sums of commission with online travel agents like Booking.com and want to own their own customers by getting maximum visibility. So, our job really is, we've been around for 13 years. Obviously, we haven't always focused on AI, but we've realized the pace of change has been so profound that we have to lean in, and we would be doing our own industry and customers a disservice if we didn't impart our knowledge. So I do lots of speaking, we do podcasts, we do all sorts of things, all about helping educate what is happening, but importantly, how you can adapt your own strategy to make sure that you don't get dumped by the wave rather than
Yeah.
ride it
Yeah.
through.
Pretty important thing to get on top of, I would have thought, at the current moment. And
Yeah.
what is it that, so, I mean, what set you on this path in particular?
Yeah. So do you mean the AI going down the sort of the AI route, AI
Yeah, I
search route?
mean, the point that you just made about spending a lot of time and energy advising or, trying to educate or
Yeah.
inform clients.
Yeah.
I mean, in the context of the way your business is changing, I mean, what inspired that action particularly? Because I mean, there's lots
Yeah.
of businesses. I mean, not that many of them are spending any time educating clients about AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's different about your approach?
Yeah, so I think as I say, we've been going for about 13 years. If we look at traditional SEO or search engine optimization, the process of maximizing visibility on Google largely, we've only been doing that for about 7 years. And what I'm certainly always looking to do is, how do we be of greater use to the market? And if you'll indulge me for a few minutes, there was a long, long time ago before I set up this business, I had a promotional marketing agency, which lasted a couple of years. I was 25, didn't really know what I was doing. And then I sort of could see that business failing. And so I had a whole load of contacts in this industry and I called them all up and said, look, I've got all these people I know. Um, what's your biggest problem? And I started calling people up and saying that. And I remember, one of those conversations that just sticks with you. I can even tell you where I was and which way I was facing when I had this call. And there was a chap who said, Adam, if you can help us, but he's obviously a hotelier, if you can help us not pay 20% to booking.com and we get all of
Okay.
those bookings through our own website, that is the holy grail. And so the penny dropped and it was like, there's your biggest problem. And this was going back to a time when, you know, um, the concept in my industry of getting more direct bookings, it was universally felt, but there weren't many suppliers actively working to help hotels achieve that. The problem wasn't so universally known, should we say? So I threw myself into this finding solutions, creative ways to solve this problem. And over the years, we've sort of found, okay, well, it all starts with visibility. You've got to be found when customers are, looking, regardless of platform. And where we are now in the industry in 2026 is that, every tech company, marketing agency is banging the drums of we'll get you more direct bookings. And we realize, you know what, it was a selling point back then. And now it's that message has become completely diluted.
Mm.
Everything from, revenue management to channel managers to, every
And
sort
what
of,
is it, and just what is it specifically that's different about, you talked about the message getting
yeah.
diluted, and what is the message that you're using to stand out as, as distinctive in the market?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we rebranded the company after over 10 years of trading. You always find that, okay, something's a bit stale. Let's spruce things up a bit. So we rebranded last year to Formula, and I was determined that it wasn't just going to be oh look, we've got a new lick of paint, new logo.
Yeah,
Why would anybody care? And so we really sort of went deep into what is the thing, what will help us stand out in answer to your question. So we came up with the strapline digital done differently, which inevitably, okay, so what makes you so different, which I think is what you're asking. And we came down to three kind of key points. The first is we don't believe in long-term contracts. So, pretty
yeah.
much every client that we work with, there's a few that we've done some negotiation with, and they want better rates. So okay, well let's tie them in a little bit longer. But pretty much every client works with us without a long-term contract. We want to work. We want to work with you because you believe in us and you believe in the results that you're getting.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we made a decision to stay small and actually limit our clients by only 20. So we only ever work with 20 clients at a time. And that's allowed us the freedom, Paul, I can't tell you, of knowing that we've got a limited capacity. Let's be really selective about who we work with. If it's not right for us, we're not going to do it, rather than taking anyone's money because we want to grow and grow and grow. So that certainly helped. And then the final point is that, we only have senior people in our team. We've If I look back at the last, 10, 15 years of being in business, most of the headaches have come from junior staff
Mm.
operating in an inexperienced way of things that seem so obvious. And you spend so much of your time, especially as a small business. Look, my business is small. We're 11 people.
Mm.
If we're a much bigger agency, then maybe we would go down the having juniors in our team. But the caliber of conversation improved so notably when we made sure, as a blanket rule, everyone's got to have at least 15 years experience. So
Mm.
now I've got the people that work for my company are proper grown-ups. They've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
around for a while, and they're not afraid to say, I really don't think that's right. I see what you're saying, but actually, I'm not sure that's the right way forward, and it's a really sort of higher caliber discussion about what's best for the agency or the client or what have you. So I found that has been a game changer for us, because when I explain this to, in sales meetings, or, what makes us different, why should we listen? Occasionally, or more than occasionally, you'll have, potential client and they'll go, well, that's refreshing, because do you know what? We've paid that 10 grand retainer that we've been paying to that massive agency. I've got a 25-year-old account manager who acts like a bit of a nodding dog. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll get right on that. And actually, that's not what you want. You want people to say, like, if we're all agreed on the collective objectives here, I'm not sure what you're asking for is going to help us get there. I think we might, there's a grown-up debate, and I think that's what's really helped us stand out in the marketplace.
and you can see, particularly now, when the big challenge is marketing agencies, you know, if you like, trying to adopt AI and not employing
Mm.
people to do that. The
Yeah,
people that you want to have a conversation with, if you're a client, the people that you want to have a conversation with are people that know what they're doing.
yeah,
So you can see why that is would pay off. I mean, I can certainly
yeah,
see that. I mean, quality actually is important. It's just that often you're competing with people that don't care about quality. So
yeah.
and cut prices accordingly. Anyway, that's a really interesting point there. Let
Mm.
me ask you about your mission here, if you
Yeah,
like. I mean, when I talk to CEOs, most of them say, building a business is like riding a roller coaster. There's good days, there's bad days, and
yeah,
everything in between.
yeah.
What is it, if you like, that gets you out of bed every day to ride that roller coaster? I mean, what is it? Why does this matter to you particularly?
Yeah. For me, it comes down to our mission as our core why, if you like, our core purpose as a company. Something from a very early age has always fascinated me about customer service, and we see it in um, we see it. You always remember a bad experience,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
from a restaurant or a hotel or any hospitality. I think hospitality is a great sort of example of where you can remember good and bad service. I've always been fascinated by really wowing customers. I've spent a little bit of time in my career in America, and you only need to be there for,
yeah.
a few days,
You
and
see the
but
difference, don't you?
you do. And
Yeah,
like it so notably the different, I mean, I appreciate it's, the tip culture and what have you. It's just a very different system there. And perhaps they don't get paid quite as much, but they make the money on the tip. All of that sort of stuff aside, if we discount the fact that, what their business model says, the customer service generally is so much higher in America than it is in the UK. Now, when I apply that thinking to my own business, my own agency model, the level of service that customers are seeing from agencies generally is very poor,
Yeah.
and so it occurred to me, what how do we just completely buck this trend? Because actually, if we go all in on, really building that relationship, over communicating, being really proactive. Oh, I've subscribed to your competitor's newsletter and it looks like they're doing this weekend. Are you aware of this? Oh, wow, no, I wasn't really. That's great. Thank you for being on it. You know, that stuff stands out so much for clients, and it really makes them feel like, supported,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
really what they want. And actually, I think there are times, obviously, with marketing, the results aren't going the right way. And that level of proactivity and relationship and service affords you more time to get it right.
Yeah.
And so
And
I found,
I totally get that. But let me ask you,
yeah,
I mean, it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to deliver it. I mean,
yeah,
you pointed out in America, that is the culture.
yes.
It's not the same here. So, in terms of your role as the CEO, I mean, how do you keep all the people in the business, if you like, on the front foot?
Hmm.
And how do you do that? Because it's very easy to say we're
Yeah,
going to focus on customer service. It's a bit
yeah.
more difficult to deliver on that, I think.
It is, yeah, and I think it's something that we're constantly looking at. So I would answer your question by saying the first thing we do is that we process it. So like that example where we subscribe to our clients' competitors' newsletters, simple thing.
Yeah,
There are certain things. What I've come to realize is that there are certain things that one can do that seem completely sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? You turn up with the customer and they're like, oh wow, these guys are really on it, and they're constantly looking at stuff. In reality, we're not spending, 8 hours a day looking for, being all over everything. We've just processed. We've got a system that allows us to show up, regularly with some really helpful insights. So simple things like we set up Google alerts for all our clients' names, all of our clients' competitors' names, and is there anything that, the saw this and thought of you email
yeah, yeah,
is so simple. But
yeah,
it goes so far because it demonstrates proactivity. It demonstrates thoughts, that's happening behind the scenes. What Once a week we have a full team, 45-minute session that the account manager will say, okay, this is the client, this is what's going on. This is everything that you need to know about this business. What ideas can we come up with? And it could be anything, it could be completely unrelated to our remit as a digital marketing agency. But if we're showing real value in, oh, I've had a couple of ideas, here's some thoughts, or I got the team together because I thought you could do, it's that extra value stuff
yeah.
that, in reality is, you know, a small portion of time, but goes a long way. So in
A
answer to your
small
question,
act has a big impact.
exactly, but we've processed it cleverly or carefully so that we're not, losing all of our time just to deliver on the woolly stuff.
Systematizing it, isn't it? Really?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And let me ask you, one of the interesting things about being a CEO is
Mm.
all the noise. I mean, there are so many things happening out
Yes.
there. This, and you could do this or you could do that, or, I mean, what's your take on cutting through the noise to work out the things that you should be doing rather than
Yeah.
all the other things that you could do?
Yeah.
What's your take on that process?
I use Google Chrome, as I'm sure most people do. I've got my bookmarks, for all the various links. Number one is my project management system. Number two is my email. Number three is my do not do list. And I am
Okay.
constantly reading things and being like, no, not for now. Because otherwise there was a time, and if I'm particularly tired, it's hard to be have the willpower to say no. But constantly things are popping into my head. Well, oh, that's a good idea. Or I'll be, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I'll be posting every day, and then somebody will post something that's really interesting. It's like, oh, what, whopping big post like that, and you think, well, that is interesting, but it's not for now. And I think it's having that discipline to
Yeah.
stay focused and understanding, like, so over the time that I've been in business, it occurred to me very early on, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And
Mm.
so I was sort of plagued by the sort of the busy bee syndrome. I don't know if that I've just made that up, but
Yeah, I get
just,
that.
yeah, going over here, then going over
Yeah.
there, and maybe that's the thing, and looking for each concept, thinking that it might be the silver bullet that, floods my business full of leads and gives me all these new customers and whatever it is. And I think in reality, as you gather more experience, I personally, I've had to be far more confident in my own abilities to know which is the best direction and actually say, occasionally something will throw you in its tracks and stop you in your tracks, and you think that is worth looking at. But it's the art of discernment
Yeah.
is really what it comes down to.
And it's easy, it's very easy to say. It's harder to do though, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
things pop up all the time. I mean, I'm dreadful for things like that because they go, oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And I end up going down some rabbit hole following
Yeah.
some idea that is nothing to do with what I'm should be focused on or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting issues is
Mm.
there's sort of noise, if you like. The other one that I'm always interested in is uncertainty. I mean, if you think about what's happening
Mm.
at the moment, we've
Yeah.
got a Middle East war
Yeah.
brewing, we've got tariffs with the US, we've got stuff happening in the UK. I mean,
Yeah.
all of that creates huge amounts of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on how you build a business, how you keep the business moving forward when actually I'm not sure what might be happening next week?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take on that?
I think in my world, my job is to stay abreast of the most up-to-date changes because everybody else, my customers, do not have the. So my job is to keep understand what is happening in the macro sort of search environment because I need to know how customers are looking for hotels because hotels don't have time to.
Yeah.
So there is my market need. Customers need to be aware of, sorry, hotels need to be aware of this. And so, my job is to keep abreast of the changing landscape. For me, I think the uncertainty always presents itself as a new opportunity for service businesses because whether you serve, whomever you serve, I have found only this year, I've done now what we early March, I think I've been on stage 7 times, all very much focused around the approach the changing landscape of search and how you have to stay visible in AI search and how AI search will surpass traditional search by 2028, according to, McKinsey and Company. There is opportunity in the uncertainty because
Yeah, yeah,
clients feel that too. And so if I can bridge that gap and say, look, things are changing, I can help you with that, with manage that change, manage that uncertainty. And that help might just be follow me, don't pay me anything, just keep abreast of my content. That's fine. But others will certainly put their hand up and say, we really need to be on this. You look like you know what you're talking about. Can you come and help us? Which inevitably happens
yeah.
if you're saying anything good. So I think
I mean,
that's
it's a
certainly one
very
of them.
interesting point you make because I think that ability to see opportunities in the heart of uncertainty and
Yeah.
is actually a really important part of what I would describe as the entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, most
Mm.
people get very wound up about uncertainty, understandably.
Yeah.
The thing that I think that often makes entrepreneurs different is they're able to see those opportunities. I mean, they can't always exploit them, but they're
Yeah.
able to spot those opportunities which emerge from that, don't they? Because
Yes.
if you like, the cards are thrown up in the air, and they could fall at any all sorts of different ways. And there's
Yeah.
always opportunities there. It's an interesting sort of mindset thing, I think. Let me ask you about
Mm.
how you well how have your values shaped the way you've built the business? I mean, you've talked about the sort of mindset there and the
Hmm.
ability to deal with sort of noise and uncertainty and find opportunities. I mean, how have your
Yeah.
values shaped the way you built the business? Are there particularly things that you feel are particularly important in terms of the way you've done things?
Yeah, and I think, my understanding of values is that in theory they shouldn't really ever change. In reality, I think, we've looked at them, over the period of 13 years that we've been running the business, and we've changed them a couple of times because, things evolve and perhaps your
Yeah,
mindset evolves. One of our value, we've got six, which I won't read them out for you, but one of the two that probably stand out most in terms of, in answer to your question, is integrity and no ego. I was once, I have many weaknesses, more than we probably have time for today. But certainly one of my strengths, I've been told, is the ego thing I don't get. It doesn't have to be about me. I don't want it to be about me. And
yeah,
actually, I'll be the first to be like, look, I really messed this up. I'm sorry. Or tell me, how can I learn? How can I be better? I think that has certainly helped shape my company because what you end up with, I mean, you hear all sorts of stories of very egotistical, you know, could be any man or woman, but generally it tends to be a male trait, I think, where they're just sort of so egotistical in the way that they approach it. You've got to massage their ego to be able to get them on board, and it just seems so foreign to me, and that's just an innate thing, I guess. But what I have found as a result of that is having brilliant people that actually want to, I'm constantly encouraging people, like if you've got a better way, especially with our seniors only approach, we're hiring you because we need you to do the job, but B, because you've got, look at all the top eight ad agencies that you've worked at, for our little agency, we need that insight. What are we missing? What have we,
yeah,
what? So I find that's certainly a thing, and integrity as well. I think to pick up on that one, it, the amount of times that we've been faced with a situation where, oh, but they wouldn't know. Yeah, but do you know what? No, just it's the wrong thing to do. Like you can sort of almost your mind allows you to go to a certain place where, oh, but it might be a bit more money, or they won't know. Stick to your values. What does the person that has the best integrity do in this situation, and that's what helps steer those decisions. So I think that I never really used to buy into values. I didn't really understand it. And then all of a sudden, when somebody put it in the context of it helps you make decisions on a daily basis,
yeah.
then it was very clear to me.
Yeah, and of course, if you make decisions consistently,
Mm.
you improve your performance as a decision maker, won't you? So you can see what's
Yes.
actually valuable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
trickier to understand and trickier to get right, but you can see why it works when people get it right.
Yeah.
Let me
Absolutely.
ask you about something else that's, I mean, particularly for small business. I mean,
Yeah.
as you said, you've kind of rebranded a few times, had to sort of pivot, change direction. I mean, for staff, that is, tough. I mean, it's
Hmm.
tough for anyone really, but it's
Mm.
tough. And that degree of change and what have you is tough for people. And every time you change direction, you bring new problems. I mean, there's
Yep.
you maybe jettison some problems, but you end up
Yep.
with, my experience is you end up with more. So one of the interesting things is how you build a team that is resilient to those kind of difficult circumstances coming along every now and again. I mean,
Mm.
what's your take on? I know you've talked about having senior people, but how do you build within the culture a sense of resilience that we can get through this? We will bounce back. I mean, what's your
Mm.
take on that?
I think there's an element of, it always worries me when we're looking at CVs for a new hire if they've only ever worked for big corporate companies,
Mm.
because I've never worked for one, but my partner does, and I can see the lack of agility that they've got in their business. So what I always need is someone that is willing to be able to kind of take everything within their stride. If I think I'm looking for people that have that, not be too phased by when things change. And I think, but so there's that, but there's also, I need to keep a positive outlook. I
Yeah.
need to not look like I'm panicked because that could potentially panic the team. But also, again, it comes down to having senior people. You know, they've probably somebody a little less experienced might see these issues and be thinking, "Oh God, you know, what's going to happen?" Um, whereas somebody a bit longer in the tooth can sort of say, "Right, okay, how do we approach this?" But then
It's
it
one of
comes
the
down,
benefits of experience, isn't it? Is that
yeah,
you had to deal with problems in the past, so you know they can be
exactly.
figured out usually. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the other interesting things that's happening at the moment is that because of digital technology, I mean, every business is in effect, is open to global opportunities. I mean, there's all sorts of
Yep.
things you can do, but the other side to that is that you're also facing global competition. I mean, in your world,
Mhm.
there's you can work from anywhere, can't you? Which means
Yep.
it's great in terms of opportunities, but it's tough in terms of competition. I mean, how do you manage that tension? Um,
Well,
because that's a new thing, that global competition.
yeah, I, I don't see it. I only see the positive side, you know, and I'll draw on some recent examples. We had a couple of LinkedIn posts that went viral. It was a sort of diagram explaining a sort of a challenging concept around that AI search is disrupting. And we've had, you know, about 200 leads over into the business in the last 2 weeks. And we're struggling to keep up with them, frankly.
Right.
And they are coming everywhere from America, from Asia, from Africa, you know, literally all over the world. And obviously, not all of those are a good fit for our business, but they're all within the hotel sector. And as a result, we've got meetings in America off the back of it. I've got a proposal next week with a couple of hotels in Indonesia. You know, I just see the opportunity
Mm.
rather than the competition. And I think, yes, of course, are we for when we're pitching for a group somewhere that is not our locality, are we competing with other agencies? Yeah, for sure. But if they've found you anyway, that's a positive because what often happens is if you can build up your presence through social, through whatever platform, and you are getting found by potential clients in faraway countries,
Mm.
then there is a natural belief that because they've found you and you're saying something that's hopefully useful, it's a massive stamp of authority. This
Yeah,
person is clearly speaking to a global audience about what it is that they do. So there is a raised perception of that
yeah,
business or individual, and that's where I think the opportunity is.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, there are tremendous opportunities. It seems to me it's really a question of figuring out how to exploit them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let me ask you specifically about your business. I mean, we've talked a
Mm.
lot about what would you say are the factors that have made helped you be successful? I mean, what sort of things have helped? Perhaps what sort of things have hindered? I mean, what would you say about that?
Um, I would say certainly what's helped is this insatiable sort of thirst for how do we do this better.
Yeah,
That's certainly a mindset that I've adopted. And again, not through any sort of, I would suggest, talent of my own, but rather through necessity of, in
yeah,
the early days, really realizing how bad I was, how little I knew. And so I needed to absorb all of this information. But that's been a gift and a curse because at times I've leant too far in the other way
mm,
and said, "This is the thing, this is the thing that's going to improve my business and skyrocket it." And the reality is, it's never the thing. It's you could go to a 3-day conference and you take away those two things, everything else could be nonsense. But those two things will move you a little bit closer to where you want to be. So I think over time, it's well, I think where I've had the good fortune to be at this long enough now to know what works for me. I'm constantly learning about myself as well. That's the other thing, if I'm not jumping over around all over the place, is there has been certain things where I've had some coaching or some personal therapy to, deal with stuff in my own personal life and, no sort of horrible trauma or anything, but just, want to be a better version of me. And what I have learned is that business, certainly small business, when you run it yourself, it shines a light on the positive, the
Yeah.
positive attributes of your personality and the negative. So perhaps where I've been sort of insecure in certain areas of my life, or not wanting to charge enough because I don't think, are we really worth it as a company? While working through that with I'm working on myself personally, that's sort of echoed in my business because as I've grown in self-worth or what have you. So without getting too deep, I found that being open to change and growing as an individual can only be a positive for your
Yeah.
business.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, I think. I mean, it seems to be one of the things I like about entrepreneurs is that they're very quick to identify when things aren't working.
Mm,
Very quick to figure out solutions to that. Because if you don't,
mm.
you end up out of you go out of
Yeah,
business or you go mad, don't you?
yeah,
And that's one of the things I like about the entrepreneurial culture. They're very focused on improvement, if you like.
yeah,
If we've got a problem here, let's get together, let's fix it, let's move on, let's do it in a different way.
yeah,
And I think that's a really healthy thing, to be honest with you.
yeah.
Let me ask you about that journey. I mean, were there any critical moments along the way that kind of shaped you as a CEO, perhaps changed you the way you do things? I mean,
Yeah,
come across any of those things?
yeah, I think it's probably, dare I say, a bit cliche mention COVID, but I think, if I look at my own sort of, everyone had a pause in life in some way or another, obviously. And I think, I look at that time. So mine was sort of mine was very clear because in February, well, where were we, 2020, my business was booming. I had a brilliant team, but it was we'd hit levels of revenue that we'd never hit before. I was about to go off to Australia for 3 weeks because I had two weddings, serendipitously, completely unrelated, but I had two weddings in 3 weeks in Australia. So, and I just had a 3-month-old baby. So we were like, right, we're going to take the month off and we're going to go to Australia. And I've got the team in place. And I was end up being over there for 5 months because we got stuck. And then we were like, well, actually, this is a good place to be. So we stayed there for quite some time. But it was in the context of business. I just signed a contract with a quite expensive agency consultant to help. Okay, we're flying now. I need help getting me from where we are now to, and I need, this bit is a whole set of new problems than this bit. And thankfully, the consultant said, rip up the contract. Now's not a good time. Just, come back to me when you're ready, which was very kind of him. But that particular moment in time was so important because if I reflect on where my business was as I jetted off to Australia, it was booming, but it was shaking.
Okay.
Everyone was stretched too thin. Everyone was sort of struggling to, no major balls were being dropped, but it was like the juggle was very, very real. It lacked systems, it lacked real structure. It did not have the ability to grow beyond really where it was. And then it all came tumbling down. We lost 75% of revenue. Hotels were closed, obviously. It was a bit of a, nightmare, but we built it up. But that pause and that, needing to build everything back up again meant that, right, let's not build it like the way we did first time.
Mm.
Let's make sure the foundations are far more, far stronger. So I'd say that's probably the big
Yeah. And
moment in my career.
it's interesting you describe that, you see, because I'm a huge believer that spending time reflecting
Mm,
is really important. Because when you say
yeah,
I'm going to reflect on something, what you're really is you're going to think about it, and
yeah,
thinking about it leads to new ideas and
mm,
ways of doing things. And so, actually taking time out to reflect is actually really important, I think.
yeah.
Let me ask you along a similar line, really. What would you
Mm.
say is the most difficult decision you've had to deal with?
In business?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
anywhere really, but I mean, we're focused on business. And
yeah, sure. I mean, the thing that strikes my mind as you ask that question is having difficult clients that you know are not a good fit.
Mm,
They feel they're spending too much money. You don't feel that they're paying enough for what they're asking for. It's just a misalignment. But we've been in that situation where we've got that. Um, that particular client is causing upset amongst the team. Where do your loyalties lie with that high-paying client or the staff that you value? And if you said goodbye to the client, people will lose their jobs because we can't sustain, like it's going to take a big dent. So having, we've been in that situation a few times and we've tried to work that through. And there was one time that we said, we can't afford to lose them in terms of, losing their business right now. But I'm going to have to. I've got to be confident. I've got to be bold here and trust our ability to replace them and not deal with the messiness and the nastiness that comes from that client. When I made that decision, the one I'm thinking about, it was difficult to make, but God, it was the right decision.
mm,
And I think, also, another one that springs to mind when in the early days when I had an account manager who I thought was good, and it took me far too long to realize just how awful she was. And there was a moment where my partner, Katie, said, "Oh, can you stop talking about so and so and just get rid of her?" And I use that as a litmus test now that if my partner Katie is bored of hearing about somebody in my business, that's the
probably
time,
need
or
to deal
or
with it.
or a
Yeah,
client exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's always I
It's,
find
it's
it.
it's interesting. I mean, a number of people have said to me that the most difficult decisions, when they've opted for the hard option rather than
Yeah,
the easy option, those have paid off well. I mean, I'm a
mm,
believer that actually, if you've got an easy option and a hard option, go for the hard one because it will probably pay off
yeah,
better.
yeah,
Even though it might be superficially less attractive. Let me
yeah,
ask you about the flip side to that. I mean, those are some good decisions that you made,
mm,
or decisions that had good outcomes. I
yeah.
mean, what about mistakes? I mean, what would you say is the biggest mistake you've made, and what did you learn from it?
Me. How long have you got?
Yeah, I mean, most entrepreneurs say that because you make mistakes all the time, don't you? Yeah,
Yeah. Um, I think some of the biggest mistakes that I've made have been focused around getting distracted,
yeah,
not seeing, you know, having a bit of success and then getting excited by this new shiny thing because I watched that YouTube video and that guy, wow, look at his business, isn't it? Oh, and we've never done that, but maybe let's do. And so the amount of times that I have started something, we're starting to get some traction, and then I've sort of gone, okay, I'm bored with that now. Let's go over here. And uh, that this is a lesson that I continually have to learn. And my managing director, who I've known for over 20 years, her job is to really quiz me on if I there's a running joke that if I say I've had an idea, it's like, oh God, look out, right, here we go. And so I find that probably my biggest mistakes have all been centered around not focusing on, not scaling what we already know works. We've got a set of services. We know we can deliver. We just need more of that rather than this over here and this over here. Or, the same is true of marketing tactics or, things that we do. And I will also just finally add to that, because of that sort of shiny penny sort of syndrome that I've become, that I'm certainly is a flaw of my character. It's meant that at times we we sort of don't stay long enough to really see the benefits. We probably should be a lot, for the length of time I've been doing this, we should be much bigger than we are. And I think, now I've started to really understand, okay, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is what we're going to say no to. Um, and that mindset is something that I've really lacked in my,
yeah. Well,
sort of
you and me
thinking.
both. I mean, I
Yeah,
have the same syndrome, shiny object syndrome.
yeah.
A couple of last questions. If you were starting from scratch, given
Mhm.
all the things that you've learned, I mean, what would you do differently?
Um, I would get really good people in much sooner than I could afford them.
Right.
I think the 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 opportunity cost or the unseen cost of doing things cheaply in business is enormous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've, there have been moments of reflection in my business, and when I turn certain age milestones, or when the business hits a certain point of anniversary or what have you, you naturally reflect. And I think it's part of the learning process. But in answer to your question, what would I do differently? I would make sure that I had the very best people I possibly could find from the start, and not try to do everything myself. I think there is that tendency, certainly in my case, to bootstrap your way to
I think
success.
that's endemic across the kind of startup
Yeah,
world, isn't it, really? People
yeah,
people do that, and it's a bit of a kind of a hero thing now. Oh, I bootstrapped it. It's
yes,
not always the best way. I mean, I think there's
no,
evidence for that. Let me ask you a corollary to that. Really. I mean, what? I mean, I'm sure you've had lots of good advice down the years. I mean, what
yeah.
one piece of advice would you give to a rookie CEO, somebody starting out, perhaps in a similar business to yours, maybe? What would your big piece of advice be?
Um, I would say to them that it comes down to, if what is a business? It's a group of people trying to deliver an outcome to a customer. And in that regard, you really got two things to do. Well, three things. You've got to find the customer. You've got to be making sure that you can deliver.
Mhm.
You've got to understand that problem, and you've got to be delivering that outcome to the best of your abilities. Um, don't ever, separate. You use, I think, the word noise at the start of the conversation, Paul. Everything else is noise if
Yeah,
you consider it like that. So get customers, be really, really good, will really understand that problem, and get really good at solving the problem. Everything else is noise.
yeah, yeah,
And that's where you need to focus.
yeah. And a great piece of advice to end the interview on. I mean, Adam, thank you for taking the time out to come and have a chat. I mean, it sounds like you've had a great time actually, and it's been a really interesting journey. And there's some fantastic lessons in there, I think. So, thank
Yeah.
you for making time, and good luck going forward.
Thank you, Paul. Great conversation. Thank you.
Cheers, Adam. Bye bye.